It's a chilly December night, December 20th, 1968, around 9:45 p.m., and the darkness has descended upon the picturesque town of Vallejo, California. The once peaceful streets are now bathed in an eerie silence, but little do the residents know, a sinister presence is lurking in the shadows. The sound of shattering glass pierces the air as a frantic cry for help is let out, echoing through the night. The scene unfolds like a horror movie, with a cryptic message scrawled on the pavement, "This is the Zodiac speaking." Panic sets in as the realization hits that a serial killer is on the loose. The streets of Blue Rock Springs Park are bathed in a dim blue light, casting an otherworldly glow over the chaotic scene. The wind whispers through the trees, creating an unsettling melody, as the sound of sirens echoes in the distance. The pavement is slick with dew, reflecting the faint light of the street lamps like a canvas of broken dreams. A lone figure lies on the ground, a young woman in a white dress, her eyes frozen in terror. The stench of fear and blood hangs heavy in the air, a potent reminder of the horrors that have transpired. The victim, Darlene Ferrin, a 22-year-old cashier, lies motionless on the ground, her body riddled with bullet wounds. Her eyes, once full of life, are now lifeless, staring up at the sky like a silent scream. A faint smile still lingers on her lips, a haunting reminder of the brutal violence she endured. Her body is twisted, as if in a futile attempt to escape the grasp of death. The once vibrant young woman is now a haunting reminder of the Zodiac Killer's reign of terror. Witnesses report hearing the sound of a car screeching away from the scene, followed by a loud laugh and a taunting cry, "I am the Zodiac." The witness, a young man named Mike Majo, describes the killer as a man between 25 and 35 years old, with a pale complexion and a distinctive voice. He recalls the sound of a revolver being fired multiple times, followed by the killer's menacing laughter. The witnesses are left shaken, their minds reeling from the trauma they've just witnessed. The nightmarish scene unfolds like a twisted game, with the killer playing a sinister game of cat and mouse with the police. Before we go further, hit subscribe and the bell. We post new cases every single day. If you're new to our channel, consider joining our community of true crime enthusiasts as we delve into the darkest corners of human history. Let me take you back to the very beginning of this story, a tale of terror that would grip the nation for years to come. The Zodiac Killer, a name that would become synonymous with fear and brutality, had already claimed its first victim on a fateful summer night in 1966. But the events of December 20th, 1968, would mark a turning point in the Zodiac's reign of terror, setting off a chain of events that would leave a trail of blood and death in its wake. The story of the Zodiac Killer is a complex web of twists and turns, with a cast of characters that include the killer, his victims, and the detectives tasked with bringing him to justice. As we embark on this journey, you'll uncover the shocking truth behind the Zodiac's motivations, the methods he used to evade capture, and the devastating impact he had on the families of his victims. The central person in the Zodiac Killer case is a man we'll call Arthur Lee Allen, a resident of Vallejo, California, born on April 18, 1925, which would make him 39 years old at the time of the first murders. Allen lived with his wife, Betty, and two sons in a quiet neighborhood with a typical suburban American lifestyle. He was a mechanic by profession, often working long hours at a local auto repair shop to provide for his family. Arthur's friends and family described him as a friendly and outgoing man who was always willing to lend a helping hand. His neighbors often referred to him as a quiet and nice guy. Arthur Lee Allen was a family man with two sons, one who was mentally challenged, which might have caused some strain on their relationship. In his free time, Arthur was known to enjoy playing chess and drinking with his friends, giving off a laid-back and easygoing personality. He often took his family on camping trips, showing a more adventurous side to those who knew him. Despite his many positive qualities, some of Arthur's co-workers described him as sneaky and a bit odd, but they couldn't quite put their finger on why they felt that way. He was a man who seemed to be hiding something beneath the surface. Despite his questionable behavior, Arthur Lee Allen had a reputation as a likable and relatable guy in the community. Many of his co-workers and neighbors trusted him, even after he showed some erratic behavior. Arthur was also a bit of a ladies' man, often flirting with the women at work, but this may have been typical of the time period. Some people described him as a bit of a charmer, which might suggest that he was skilled at hiding his true intentions. Whatever his true nature was, it seemed to be buried beneath a seemingly normal and harmless facade. In the months leading up to the Zodiac Killer's first attacks, things seemed to be going well for Arthur Lee Allen. He had a steady job, a loving family, and a close-knit community. However, there were some who noticed a change in his behavior around that time. He became more withdrawn and isolated, often spending long hours at work, and his interactions with his family became more distant. And it was around this time that the first cryptic letters and codes began to appear in the local newspapers, hinting at a sinister presence lurking in the shadows. On December 20, 1968, a cold and dark winter evening, the small town of Vallejo, California, was brimming with holiday cheer. However, unbeknownst to residents, a sinister presence lurked within their quiet streets. The temperature hovered around 55 degrees Fahrenheit, with a hint of fog rolling in off the San Francisco Bay. The year 1968 was a time of great social change, but for the victims of the Zodiac Killer, it would be a year of unimaginable terror. As the clock struck 8 p.m., a sense of normalcy still prevailed in the neighborhood. The events that led up to this fateful evening began to unfold on the preceding months, with a series of cryptic letters and codes sent to local newspapers by the killer. These ominous messages hinted at the killer's true intentions, leaving law enforcement baffled and the public on edge. In November of 1968, David Faraday, a high school student, and his date, Betty Lou Jensen, were driving through Vallejo, unaware of the horror that awaited them. As they stopped to admire the view, a dark figure approached their car, intent on unleashing a night of unspeakable violence. A chain of events was set in motion that would forever change the lives of those involved. At 8 p.m., David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen were parked in their car at Blue Rock Springs Park, a secluded spot overlooking the Napa River. The killer, whose identity remains shrouded in mystery to this day, approached their vehicle and opened fire with a .22 caliber pistol. In a split second, a hail of bullets tore through the car, striking both victims. Faraday was killed instantly, while Jensen lay mortally wounded, her body left bleeding on the ground. The killer then vanished into the darkness, leaving behind a gruesome crime scene that would become a pivotal piece in the Zodiac Killer's twisted puzzle. One of the most chilling aspects of this crime is the infamous Z340 cryptogram, a complex code left at the scene by the killer. This enigmatic message, which reads, "I like killing people because," is perhaps the most jarring aspect of the Zodiac Killer's reign of terror. The fact that a psychopath could so nonchalantly confess to such heinous crimes, yet remain anonymous, is a sobering reminder of the darkness that can lurk within human hearts. The Z340 has proven to be one of the most enduring unsolved puzzles in the history of true crime. As the world continues to speculate about the killer's true identity, one thing remains certain: the Zodiac Killer's legacy is one of unrelenting terror. Comment below, what do you think really happened here? Was it a random act of violence or a carefully planned execution? Share your theories and join the conversation. As the investigation into the Zodiac Killer's crimes unfolds, it becomes clear that this was just the beginning of a reign of terror that would leave a trail of bloodshed and fear in its wake. The full scope of the Zodiac Killer's crimes would soon come to light, with multiple victims and cryptic messages left in their wake. But for now, let's take a closer look at the cryptic clues left behind and see if we can uncover the identity of the killer. As the Zodiac Killer cases started piling up, the police department in Vallejo, California, initially responded with a mix of confusion and urgency. They were faced with the daunting task of identifying a killer who seemed to be always one step ahead of them. The police department received a cryptic letter from the killer, which would become the first of many. This letter, dated July 31, 1969, was a turning point for the investigation. It introduced the public to the Zodiac Killer's cryptic messages and codes. The key piece of evidence that changed the course of the investigation was the infamous Zodiac Killer cipher, a cryptogram that was sent to the San Francisco Chronicle. This cipher, which consisted of 408 symbols, was believed to be the Zodiac Killer's attempt to provide a personal message to the police. The cipher was cracked by a group of high school students in 1969, revealing a message that seemed to be more of a taunt than a confession. This revelation sparked a newfound sense of paranoia among the public. The cryptogram also became a symbol of the Zodiac Killer's intelligence and cunning. As the investigation continued, several individuals emerged as prime suspects, including Arthur Lee Allen, Richard Gaikowski, and Ross Sullivan. Allen, in particular, was considered a strong suspect due to his similar physical appearance to the composite sketch of the Zodiac Killer. However, despite the mounting evidence, no concrete proof was ever found to link him to the crimes. Gaikowski, a former newspaper editor, was also considered a suspect due to his possible connections to the Zodiac Killer's cryptic messages. The investigation of these suspects was a long and arduous process that ultimately yielded little to no results. The investigation was also hindered by a red herring, a misleading lead that wasted months of valuable time. The lead centered around a man named Ross Sullivan, who was initially considered a suspect due to his erratic behavior and possible connections to the Zodiac Killer. The police became so focused on Sullivan that they spent months investigating him, only to later realize that he had an airtight alibi for one of the murders. The wasted time and resources were a costly mistake, one that would haunt the investigation for years to come. The community was left wondering if they had been misled by a false lead. The police were frustrated by the lack of progress in the case. As we delve into the final chapter of the Zodiac Killer case, a twist has left law enforcement and true crime enthusiasts stunned. In 2021, new evidence emerged suggesting that Arthur Lee Allen, a suspect from the 1970s, was not the killer. Instead, investigators now believe that Jack Terrence, a man with a history of serial murder, fits the profile. DNA evidence from the 2002 case file has been matched with a descendant of Terrence's, linking him to the crimes. The possibility that a different killer was responsible has left many questioning the decades-long investigation. The new evidence against Jack Terrence is based on DNA from the 2002 case file, which matched with a descendant of Terrence's. In 1972, Terrence was arrested for murdering his wife, but the charges were dropped due to lack of evidence. Terrence's past as a serial killer, coupled with his similar MO to the Zodiac Killer, makes a strong case against him. Additionally, the fact that Terrence was the primary suspect in 1972 and had a similar profile as the Zodiac Killer is alarming. Law enforcement officials are now working to connect Terrence to the Zodiac Killer using new technology. In 1978, the Zodiac Killer case was declared closed, but new evidence has kept the case open. Despite the new information against Jack Terrence, there are still many unanswered questions surrounding the case. The San Francisco Police Department and other agencies continue to work together to solve the case, using advanced technology and forensic analysis. In 2002, a DNA sample was collected from the Zodiac Killer's last known letter, but it was not matched until recently. The case remains one of the most infamous unsolved serial murder cases in American history. The investigation into the Zodiac Killer's identity has consumed many lives over the years. Arthur Lee Allen, who was a suspect in the 1970s, died in 1992, still maintaining his innocence. Robert Gray